Welcome, everyone, to Time Warp here on the Fandom Podcast Network. We are discussing 1983, the movies in pop culture of 1983, because they are all celebrating their 40th anniversary. And this is part one. We're going to be discussing the months of January and February and March of 1983. And if you're listening to this audio version of the podcast, make sure you please check us out on YouTube for the video version, because we've got some great movies and posters, great movie posters and pictures to share with you on the video. It'll be a lot of fun. So anyway, my name is Kevin, your host. I'd like to introduce my guest for this time travel journey back to 1983. And with us, as always, is our queen of movie foo, Lacee Aderhold. What is up? How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing really, really good. We got some 83 going on here, and we got someone else that we have to bring into this, of course, is my brother from another mother, co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's up, buddy?
It is the Time War podcast where our object is to make you feel old.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Kyle, because here we are discussing the movies of 1983. And, in the last few years, of course, we've done 81 and 82, and we're staying in that order right now because then the year falls 40 years later. And this is a big milestone for all of these movies, because also all of the music and the pop culture and the events that surround these movies are all turning 40 years old. And now 83 too, guys, is when the home video market was really starting to become a thing. Early, video rental stores and movies and stuff like that. But still, we were still kind of young at this age in 83. I was becoming 12. I was 12 going on 13. Kyle, what about you?
I was 8. But I have a question for everybody here real quick.
Hold on. Before I ask that question, I'm setting everyone's time here. You were 8 going on 9, right?
Yep.
And then Lacee, you were what?
I was 9, about to be 10.
Okay. All right. Kyle, your question.
Well, you mentioned that this is the time when home video was just starting to come up. I just want to know what everybody's what was your first video membership that you had? What was your first store? Do you remember the name of it?
I think for me, Kyle, it was Captain Video, and then Video Schmidio, and then it was Blockbuster, and then eventually Hollywood Video, if I remember correctly. What about you, Lacee?
I think my local library was first.
Oh yeah, a lot of people were doing that. Yeah,
it was. I think that was the order. I think it was the library was first, and then there was Blockbuster, of course, Hollywood Video, and we still have Videodrome in downtown Atlanta, down at like Little 5 Points area, and
nice.
It's like a small kind of like indie, cutting edge, all the stuff you couldn't find anywhere else.
Gotcha. What about you, Kyle? What was your first?
My first was called Neighborhood Video, and then it was actually Block. Then it became Block. Then Blockbuster came in, but I also had Box Office Video, and at least in my hometown, because I actually worked the video counter when they installed it. Our local grocery store, Safeway, had a video rental counter. And
I worked at the Kroger Video.
So. It was funny because when they put that counter in, they had all these computers and nobody had any idea what was going on but me. So the agreement was in Alaska, you couldn't run a register at a grocery store because they were unionized until you turned 18. So literally on my 18th birthday, they moved me back to that video counter and said, "This is where you're going to be for a long time now." And
well, this was as we've touched on, this is a huge year for home video. A lot of stuff is coming out on home video. But there was also something else that this movie was huge for. There's a huge explosion of sex teen comedies. Yes. Of course, earlier films like Fast Times at Richmond High and Porky's realized that these were cheap to make and way to get a lot of the teenagers and young adults into the movie theaters or drive-ins to see these films. And we're going to be talking about a few of those just even in this first podcast, because there was a lot that came out during this time. But and I've got videos of several of them right here that we're going to be discussing. Yeah, it's just it became a thing, and it's interesting too because I look at like 4 of these that I have here. Might keep a couple of them. We'll see.
Now, Kevin, I honestly thought if you looked at through your physical media collection, there was like at least one wall that was nothing but 80s teen sex comedies, because there's enough to cover probably about 5 or 6.
If I took all of them out of my collection, I might actually have a wall full of teen sex comedies, because I've got 4 of them right here. One of these I'm not a fan of. I'm definitely not going to keep, but I think I'll keep the other ones because they're interesting for particular reasons, and 3 of those we will definitely be jumping into. Lacey, were you ever watching any of these teen sex comedies? Did they appeal to you at all?
Not at 9 years old, no.
Later on, when we were watching these.
I remember that when I was about 13 or 14, and we ended up having, like, when we got HBO, there was always kind of like an 80s kind of weekend or whatever, where they do all the different random comedies, and they would always play them on TNT with the blooped out where they do the alternate takes where they would say appropriate words for television and whatnot, and they would be 57 minutes long, stretched to 2 hours on the networked television. But yeah, I watched some here and there. I will say that the early 80s was a big time for sex comedies, and then hardcore action, but not like action, like people beating the crap out of each other action, like vengeance action.
Yeah, a lot of vengeance action, unfortunately, a lot of violence towards women as well.
Yep.
Domestic. Thus having hardcore cops and people getting revenge on such people. So yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, I think it's time. Let's take a step back into 1983. Let's fuel up that DeLorean with the flux capacitor. Let's slingshot around the sun aboard a captured Klingon bird of prey, or take a step in that blue police box or phone booth. What else we got? Oh yeah, that quantum leap accelerator works most of the time. But my favorite, as always, we could take a dip into that hot tub time machine and travel back to 1983, where we're going to remind you what was happening in pop culture, sports, politics, television, of course, the movies of 1983. All right, guys. Back in 1983, what was going on here? Let's go ahead and get into that. First of all, a gallon of milk was $1.89. Dozen of eggs, $1.13.
Dozen eggs now might equal what average salary did back in 1983.
This is true. Yes. Postage stamp was 20 cents. Average salary was about $22,000. Gallon of gas, $1.16. Average new car, $10,000. Average house was about $89,000. What else we got going on here? Okay. So the average monthly rent was $335. So there's some averages for you there. We also have some world news for you guys here. What we got here, first of all, president was Ronald Reagan. Vice president was George H.W. Bush. Chief Justice was Warren E. Burger. And the Speaker of the House was good old Tip O'Neill. January, here we go. We got some stuff for you here. The musical Annie is performed for the last time after 2,377 shows at the Alban Theater in Broadway, New York. Kilauea volcano begins slowly erupting the Big Island of Hawaii on December 5th, 2018, after 90 days of inactivity in the volcano. The eruption that had started was declared to finally be over. So it took a while. Sports news, January 30th, Washington Redskins defeat the Miami Dolphins by a score of 27-17 in Super Bowl XV11, whatever that was.
Wasn't that Joe Theismann as the quarterback of the Redskins?
Oh, yes. That was definitely Joe Theismann in that one. And then they went to the Super Bowl the following year, but it didn't go too well for him then. So In February 28th, the final episode of MASH airs, setting a new record for most watched television broadcast in American history. Lacey, were you a MASH head?
Oh, when we would go down to my grandparents' house for the summer, every night we were allowed to stay up late enough to watch MASH.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always got we got to watch MASH, and it was on at 11:30 after the news. So if we could stay awake during the news, then we could see MASH.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle? You MASH head family?
It's one of those things. I think I've seen it all because of syndication at some point. It wasn't like it was must watch TV for me, but I definitely respect the history of it and where it came from. But I do have a question for Lacey since she watched it so diehard. Trapper John or BJ Honeycutt?
Man, Colonel Potter. Colonel Potter was always my favorite. Like, yeah, and Radar. Come on.
I couldn't stand that show.
Really?
Could not stand it. Alan Alda just annoyed the hell out of me. Everyone else seemed to like it. I just didn't get the humor. It just didn't do it for me. I know I'm in the minority, but whenever MASH came on, I either changed a channel or left the room. I still can't stand it. Just
well, I'll say this one thing. MASH is probably the only thing I ever really cared for Alan Alda in.
Yeah. No, I've seen him in other stuff, but anyway, yeah, I was not a fan of him. So
I will say MASH was the first when Ron Howard was trying to get out of like the Richie Cunningham good boy kind of phase, or personality or whatever. He was on one of the first episodes of the first season of MASH where he played a racist who would not take a transfusion from a black soldier.
Oh wow.
It was, that kind of goes back to, some crazy.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Also, March 28th, 1983, Strategic Defense Initiative, U.S. President Ronald Reagan makes his initial proposal to develop technology to intercept enemy missiles. The media dubbed the plan Star Wars. Remember that?
Wait, there's a back room in the Pentagon somewhere that has layouts for Star Wars and all the uniforms they were going to use for Space Force.
For Space Force, nice. All right, guys. Next, we have because you were born in 1983. We've got some celebrity births here that we definitely have to mention here. And what's interesting, guys, is there's a lot of actors that you're starting to know a little bit more because of the age, same age area, I guess. And in January, we had Kate Bosworth, Anthony Kerrigan, and J.J. Arrington, a football player. In February, we had Hannibal Buress, Luke Barnett, Julia Ling, Ren Schmidt, Justin Verlander, baseball player, Liza Schlesinger, comedian, Aziz Ansari, actor and comedian, Kate Mara, actress. Mm-hmm. In March, we had Adam Conover, Jessica Heap, actress, Raquel Alessi, actress, Bobby Campo, an actor, Carrie Underwood, of course, country singer, Taylor Hanson from Hanson, Stephanie Gashett, actress, Kyle Downs, Nicole Muirbrook, Michael Cassidy, and Melissa Ordway. Starting to feel not too old after hearing some of these names, guys, because when we were going back to 81, I was starting to really feel it. Now, we also had a few celebrity deaths in 1983 as well, guys. We had Meyer Lansky, one of the most financially successful gangsters in American history. He died January 15th. Bear Bryant, one of the greatest college football coaches of all time. He died January 26th and died too young. Karen Carpenter, singer and drummer known for a distinctive 3-octave voice for the Carpenters. And Tennessee Williams, one of the finest American playwrights in the 20th century, best known for his work of The Glass Menagerie. I just want to mention regarding Meyer Lansky, guys, I did a little more like rabbit hole diving and down what he has been part of. World War II. This guy basically was allowed to control his criminal underworld by the USS government because he was able to help spy on people. He would like find out like if there was any, sympathizers for the enemy. He even patrolled docks with his gangsters. He worked with the government basically to help patrol the eastern seaboard, mostly during World War II. I found that fascinating, and he died of old age, wasn't gunned down at all. Any thoughts on the celebrity deaths here, guys? Lacey?
All I know about Meyer Lansky is what I learned from the Christian Bale, Patrick Dempsey film Mobsters.
Mobsters, yes.
So I feel like we're going to talk about him in about 7 or 8 more years. He'll be on the, it was like 87 or 89, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think it was like 90 maybe. I think yeah.
So that's I literally know nothing about him other than what it may or may not be a true depiction of this person.
Kyle?
By Christian Bale. I mean, Christian Slater. Sorry.
Well, obviously Tennessee Williams is a legend. Bear Bryant is a legend, though he has some not so friendly stories that we shouldn't probably be talking about. A massive died way too early. Karen Carpenter. A lot of musicians dying young around this time frame. It seems like so.
Yep. All right, next we got some technology here for you guys. Things get kind of interesting here. We've got I thought this was interesting, and I found this ad from a newspaper clipping here. The PYE, the Pi 22-inch teletext TV, finds the best possible picture for you automatically. It says here, you no longer have to rely on eye and thumb to find the elusive station signal because this new TV incorporates automatic digital search tuning. We also had the Apple that introduces the Lisa computer here. And it says here, the first commercial personal computer with a graphical user interface, GUI, and was thus an important milestone in computing as soon Microsoft Windows and the Apple Macintosh would soon adopt the GUI as their user interface. Kyle, I always go to you for this. This was a Motorola 68000 microprocessor equipped with 1 MB of RAM, a 12-inch black and white monitor, a 5.25-inch floppy disk. Did you ever see one of these in person?
I've never seen one in person. I've heard about it. It really kind of was not a huge hit. It was important as far as it developing towards the Mac for Apple. It was really kind of a lot of the early concepts there. But this really never got too far off the ground. However, the other Apple computer that came out this year as well was in a lot of homes.
Would you be talking about this one right here? The Apple IIe? Is that what this is?
I know many a person who had an Apple IIe when I was growing up.
Yeah, and Apple Lisa. Apple Lisa there. That one's a weird looking one. I don't like the way that one looks. I'm not a fan of that one right there. But the item next to it is the Bernoulli box, memory and storage, using a special cartridge-based system that used hard disk technology. The Bernoulli box was a type of removable storage that allowed people to move large files between computers. The cartridges came in capacities ranging from 5 megabytes to 230 megabytes. Kyle, did you have one of these?
That would be a big negatory on that. How far we've come. It's the original version of the flash drive.
I know, right? Yeah. Lacey, your parents had some tech. Did they have any of these things mentioned?
Well, remember when computers were first happening, you had Apple and you had IBM, and IBM was very much catered toward the business side of things, and Apple was catered towards the artists and the creatives and whatnot. And my father was in business, so our home computers skewed towards IBM.
Gotcha.
I didn't have any of the fun, that. Although when I was in 8th grade, so you're talking 4 more years or whatever, I did take my first computer programming class, and that was all on Apples.
Gotcha.
I played one of my first home computer video games that I absolutely loved on an Apple IIe. It was a game called Karateka.
Okay.
All right, guys. We got some products that were introduced here. It's going to get fun here. Here we go. All right. First, we've got some Nerds. Nerds Candy. Launched in 1983 by Sunmark Corporation under the brand name Willy Wonka Candy Company. Nerds are now made by the Ferrara Candy Company, a subsidiary subsidiary of the Fiero Group. With their anthropomorphic covers, Nerds usually contain 2 flavors per box, and each flavor had a separate compartment and opening. And then also we had the Axe body spray, launched in France in 1983. Kyle, what were your favorite Nerds?
Okay, well, first, a very important question. Were you a nerd mixer, or were you strictly, nope, I got to just stick with one side or the other until it's gone?
I was not a nerd mixer. What about you, Lacey?
I didn't like Nerds. I liked the Gobstoppers. When it came to the Willy Wonka brand, Nerds just they had that sour. Nope. I'm good. Thanks.
Kyle, were you a mixer?
It depended on the flavors. The grape and strawberry, hell yes, I was mixing those together.
I did succumb to the nerd mixing a lot later. Yeah, Axe body spray. Okay, guys. For you that are around right now, men that are using Axe body spray, Axe is not one of those sprays that you spray into the air and then walk into it and overuse it just to cover up your BO. Okay? You just need to use a little tiny bit, and you know who you are.
So what you're saying is anybody who goes to a convention, basically.
No, not necessarily. Maybe games. I'm just going to put that out there. All right. All right. We got some totally tubular 80s toys here, guys. We got some a few fun ones here. First of all, and we got some great pictures of these, so make sure you check them out. We've got the Cabbage Patch doll, of course, dolls. We got the Atari 5200, priced $200, 16K RAM.
Stop right there.
Yep.
I had an Atari 5200. I saved up a $2 a week allowance to get an Atari 5200.
How long did that take you?
So with a little help from Dad here and there, I think after like 6 months, because I didn't spend a dime for 6 months, and Dad finally said, okay. But the cartridges were this really weird size. But one of the coolest things with the Atari 5200 is it had an adapter you would plug into the top of it, and you could play the old 2600 games, and you could plug in the 2600 joystick into the front of the Atari 5200. The Atari 5200 is a highly underrated game system. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, I got a question. Why do they have the little numbered keypad underneath the joystick? What did that serve?
Steal from Intellivision, actually. If you remember, the television had the keypad with the little like disc, but the thing that sucked about the Intellivision was it used those phone cords, the curly phone cords, and they wouldn't stretch at all. With the Atari 5200, like with the football, you had a little thing you put over the numbers, and you could that's how you would call your plays.
Ah, I see. Okay, very cool. Very cool. Nice. What else do we have here? We also had, of course, the Communication Center by Petite. Looked like some kids can play with some phone dialing and some typewritery and cassette playing stuff. Combines 14 different play activities into a compact, easy-carrying case set including dial typewriter, envelope pad, pencil, eraser, and holders, pencil sharpener and storage, dial telephone with extension cord, switchboard, clock, play CB, and a dictaphone, and more. That's kind of cool. To me, that just looks like a spy starter kit. That's what that looks like.
The girls would get those as like it was like a secretary thing. It looked like an old school, where they take the telephone operators.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Walking dog xylophone, $8.99. I feel like we saw one of these in a Toy Story movie. Plunk out a tune on this doggy's back or pull him along and let him play his own tune. Plastic with steel keys, measures 14 inches long and includes an easy-to-read sheet music. And last but not least, the boys, Dukes of Hazzard set, figures, and General Lee. Price is $5.99. Duke Boys and General Lee. Look out, Hazard County. Here come the Dukes. Car sunroof opens and Bo and Luke figures are posable. Kyle, I don't remember a sunroof on the General Lee.
Well, it wasn't a sunroof on the General Lee, but I did have this toy.
Me too.
It was the early. They used the GI Joe O-ring for Bo and Luke, but it was about 6 months to a year later. The Night 2000 voice car came out, which was a little bit bigger than this General Lee. But let's just say there was a lot of trips that somehow Kit ended up lost in Hazard County and needed a little help from the General Lee.
You had this too, Lacey?
Oh yeah. I had these, and then a little bit later, I had the Jeep, Daisy's Jeep, and the, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, next, guys, we have some music news here. And starting in January, the UK singles chart is tabulated from this week's forward by the Gallup organization. 1984 electronic terminals was used in select stores to gather sales information, and the old sales diary method will be gradually phased out over the next few years. Menudo Mania, February 2nd, comes to New York as 3,500 screaming girls crowd Kennedy Airport to catch a glimpse of Puerto Rican boy band Menudo, who are playing 6 sold-out shows at the Felt Forum. Wow. The Rolling Stones on February 11th concert film Let's Spend the Night Together opens in New York. Marvin Gaye performs the Star Spangled Banner before the NBA All-Star Game. And February 23rd, the 25th annual Grammy Awards are presented in Los Angeles, hosted by John Denver. Toto win both Album of the Year for Toto 4 and Record of the Year for Rosanna, while Willie Nelson's cover of Always on My Mind wins Song of the Year. Men at Work win Best New Artist. There you go for that. Michael Jackson's Thriller album on February 26th hit number 1 on the U.S. charts, the first of 37 non-consecutive weeks it would spend there, on its way to becoming the biggest selling album of all time. And February 28th, U2 release their third album, War, which debuts at number 1 in the UK and produces the band's first international hit single, Lacey.
I actually still have an original 1983 pressing in the vinyl. I mean, in the plastic.
Oh, is it in good condition?
Yeah, it's been framed for 15, 20 years.
Nice. Kyle.
I just wanted to mention the Marvin Gaye performing the Star Spangled Banner before the NBA All-Star Game on February 13th. Until Whitney Houston at the Super Bowl, that was considered the performance of the Star Spangled Banner.
Yes, they would always bring that up of like one of the most iconic versions of that song being sung during any sports event. And it was probably Whitney Houston that kind of like took it to another level. But yeah, Marvin Gaye, definitely up there of all time.
Didn't Jimi Hendrix have a rendition of that was like insane?
Yeah, he did that at the if I remember correctly, he did that at Woodstock, right? Maybe.
I'm just in the brain of the what? Maybe. Yeah, I was pulling that from somewhere.
In March, compact discs, March 2nd, go on sale in the United States. They had first been released in Japan the previous October. Compact disc, 1983. March 4th, Neil Young cancels the remainder of his tour after collapsing backstage in Louisville, Kentucky, after playing for 75 minutes. And March 5th, the Thompson Twins have their first success in Love on Your Side enters the top 10 in the UK. And March 25th, Motown celebrates the 25th anniversary with a televised special Motown 20th Yesterday, Today, and Forever, during which Michael Jackson performs Billie Jean and introduces the moonwalk. That was a big deal.
Yeah, that one of the most iconic moments still in music television history.
Correct. And last but not least, for March, Duran Duran enters the UK singles chart at number 1 with their first UK number 1 hit single, Is There Something I Should Know? Tears for Fears debut album, The Hurting, reached number 1 on the UK chart as well. All right, guys. This is where we like to dive into the Billboard Top 100 for 1983. And we like to tackle about 25 at a time. And at number 100, we have Fall in Love with Me by Earth, Wind, and Fire, Breaking Us in Two by Joe Jackson, Don't Cry by Asia, You Got Lucky by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Tonight I Celebrate My Love, Peebo Bryson and Roberta Flack, It Might Be You by Stephen Bishop, I've Got Rock and Roll Heart by Eric Clapton, Far From Over by Frank Stallone, True, Spandau Ballet, Pass the Duchy, Musical Youth, number 90, Photograph by Def Leppard, Human Nature, Michael Jackson, What About Me, Moving Pictures, Lawyers in Love by Jackson Browne, Dead Giveaway by Shalimar, Try Again, Champagne. At number 84, She's Sexy in 17, Stray Cats, Take Me to the Heart by Quarter Flash, Steppin' Out by Joe Jackson, Faithfully by Journey, Heartbreaker by Dionne Warwick. And at 79, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy by Sammy Hagar. 78, All This Love by DeBarge. 77, I'll Tumble For You by Culture Club. And last but not least for this section, It's a Mistake by Men at Work. Lacey, what are a couple of your favorites out of this group?
Stray Cats, man. Sexy and 17 and I'll Tumble For Ya. Culture Club. I think a lot of these were like slower. I mean, Def Leppard's, awesome. Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of these were kind of like melodic, and I was always kind of like, if you can't, I need a little bit more rhythm in my music.
Right. Kyle?
Photograph is a big one for me. Human Nature is actually one of my favorite Michael Jackson songs. Can never go wrong with Faithfully, with Journey either. And I'll Tumble For You. This is when Culture Club was just on a run. I mean, they were just pumping out hit after hit after hit. And Kevin, I'm going to ask you, because Pass the Dutchie, there was a movie not too long ago that really put that in the spotlight, and I'm drawing a blank.
I think that wasn't that in Stranger Things?
That's what it was. Maybe it was Stranger Things.
Yeah, I think it was. There was a scene in Stranger Things when that song resurfaced, but that was a huge hit. I remember that song. A lot of people.
I'm still not sure that I remember it at all. I can't place the tune.
Pass the Dutchie to the left-hand side.
I think it was basically a joint, right? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
She's Sexy and 17, Stray Cats. So that was one of my favorites out of this. And of course, probably my favorite is Photograph with Def Leppard, because this is when I was, because that was being played all over MTV. I didn't have MTV at our house, but when I was over at my friend's house, we were watching it all the time. So definitely. You Got Lucky by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was also one of my favorites as well. All right, guys, we're going to get into a television. We got to talk about television here, guys. These are the 1983 top-rated television shows, and we cover the top 30, but there's several of them that kind of share a spot. And at number 30, we had Trapper John MD. We had Hardcastle and McCormick, Knight Rider, Alice, Webster. We also had the Tuesday night movie on CBS, and there's a few of those that I have here. There's The First Affair starring Melissa Sue Anderson, Joel Higgins, and Loretta Swit. We also had Happy Endings with John Snyder, Anna Alicia, and Catherine Hicks. And that's what we have for the first group here. Obviously, Knight Rider, probably one of the biggest here for us. I never watched Hardcastle and McCormick. Never watched Trapper MD for obvious reasons. Webster I did, and I don't remember these Tuesday night movies. I don't know if my family was watching those again. Kyle, what about you?
Well, Knight Rider is probably the biggest one. I remember Hardcastle and McCormick for the Corvette. Webster, Emmanuel Lewis. I gotta say, Alice was in syndication a ton living in Alaska at the time. So there was a lot. It was on every night at like 7 o'clock. It was like a brick of Alice and WKRP in Cincinnati. So
yeah, it's funny. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but Alice was on heavy rotation at our house for many years. And it was also the reason my mom decided to talk to me about the birds and the bees, because there was an episode where Alice did it with her son, and it was very awkward.
I think one of the most famous Alice episodes I remember, there's actually two. The one that had Meadowlark Lemon in it, and the one where they somebody drove right through.
Kyle, you might want to explain who Meadowlark Lemon is to some people that don't know who that is.
Yeah, him and Curly Neal at the time were the big two of the Harlem Globetrotters. Of course, the traveling basketball team, not as quite as popular as now, but it was a comedy basketball thing, really popular in the 70s and most of the 80s as well. But there was that one, and like I said, there was an episode where somebody, it might have been even Vera, who ends up driving through the diner.
Yeah, I always remember Flo, Kiss My Grits. She always stole every scene that she did. The sassy elder of the waitresses there. What about you, Lacey? What were some of yours that you might have jumped in on these?
I remember Webster. Again, I was 9, so that's probably the one that I was the most interested in. I know we watched Knight Rider every week, as a family. My dad loved that. I love that. Everybody loved that. I will say that later on in life, Webster lived in Atlanta, and he frequented a diner that I frequented as well. So I actually got to meet him dozens of times. He was, he was always up at the Landmark Diner up on Roswell Road. So,
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We also have some 83 TV debuting this year. Some of these I don't know. We have Hitman, which I couldn't get anything on. Apparently they were 30-minute episodes, but it might have been canceled like right away. But it started Peter Tomarkin, Rod Roddy, and Randy West. I don't have any other information on these, but apparently there was maybe only one episode that dropped. I don't remember.
I think it was a musical thing. It was about music hits. It was like one hit wonders or something. It was kind of like a name that tune or guess the whatever.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It was like a game show, I think.
Maybe. Oh, you're right. It is an NBC game show. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good call. Thank you. By the way, we also had a Betty White TV series. Didn't last very long. Called Just Men, short-lived game show on NBC daytime. 2 female contestants were asked questions about the lifestyles of 7 male celebrities in the studio. This one I do know, Fraggle Rock, guys. This started on HBO. I didn't get to see it right away. Didn't have HBO, but I know it was a staple in many people's lives, like yourself, Kyle, right?
Oh, I remember Fraggle Rock being a huge deal when it came out too. HBO hyped the hell out of Fraggle Rock, and I remember getting up early. I think it was Sunday mornings to watch it because that was the time frame it hit, being in Alaska. But who can forget the never-ending adventures of Gobo, Goober, Wimbley, and Uncle Traveling Matt?
We also had Mama's Family premiering on NBC in January, and the A-Team premiered January in 1983. Oh, the van, so much good. Mr.
83
T
was a good year for Mr. T.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. In February, we had The Dukes, a CBS Dukes of Hazzard cartoon. Amanda's on ABC starring B. Arthur, and Wizards and Warriors with Jeff Conaway. In March, we had High Performance with Jack Scalia and Lisa Hartman. At Ease, creator was John Hughes, by the way. Small Fry, CBS show starring Darren McGavin. Fandango on TNT was a country music trivia game show. I-40 Paradise was a comedy. Nashville Now was a music talk show host. And Ace Crawford, Private Eye, mystery comedy that starred Tim Conway. I don't even remember some of these. It just goes right by me. We did have some celebrity film debuts as well, guys. We had Curtis Armstrong in Risky Business, Rowan Atkinson in Never Say Never Again, Kathy Baker in The Right Stuff, Juliette Binoche in Liberty Bell, Mark Boone Jr. in Variety, Matthew Broderick in Max Dugan Returns, Clancy Brown in Bad Boys, Jim Carrey in All in Good Taste, filmed in 1981 but released in 83. Nancy Cartwright was in Twilight Zone, the movie. Wendy Crewson was in Skullduggery. John Cusack was in Class. Warwick Davis, of course, in Return of the Jedi, and Vincent D'Onofrio in The First Turn On. Does this make you feel old, guys?
No. Max Dugan Returns, though, man, that is a blast from the past. I love that movie.
I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen it, actually.
Jason Robards is a grandfather that shows up out of nowhere to meet his 15-year-old grandson, but he was a con man, so the mother didn't want anything to do with him.
Wow. And
she was dating a cop who's investigating the dad, and that's Donald Sutherland. It was really funny.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right, guys. This is where we get to our break here. We're going to take a break from Time Warp and let you know what other great podcasts are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. We're going to be back talking about the movies of 1983. We'll be right back, guys. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast. We cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Time Warp 1983, the movies in pop culture, all celebrating their 40th anniversary. This is part one. And as we always do, we wanted to let you guys know we couldn't cover everything in this section. There is some movies, a couple movies that we put on the cutting room floor. We'll get a brief mention a little bit later. But let's get into the first one here, guys. I actually own this one right here. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I think I told you about it a while, Kyle, because I think it's on Tubi, and this is Joysticks. Made about $4 million, and when a top local businessman and his two bumbling nephews try to shut down the town's only video arcade employees and patrons fight back. The biggest star in this is Joe Don Baker in here, and it's basically a reason to kind of throw video games and cute girls and people chasing after each other in that way. And it was fun. It was simple. It's pretty much what you expect. Kyle, did you get a chance to see this?
You came from Tubi, man. Okay, first of all, 80s teen sex comedy alert.
Yep, right here.
Yeah, this was capitalizing on two of the biggest things at this time. Teen sex comedy and video games. Let's just two great things that go apparently great together, much like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. This movie is definitely not the greatest movie in the world, but it is very representative of the times and the type of movies that were coming out. And it's fun seeing some of the old video games too.
This is true. When Graydon Clark approached the company, he is the director, Midway, about using the image of Pac-Man in the film, he also requested that they allow him to feature a yet-to-be-released game in order to increase the film's appeal. The game Midway chose to feature was Satan's Hollow, which was played in the face-off between King Vidiot and McDorphus. Those are characters in there. And Graydon Clark also said that he stated that he developed the idea for the film after seeing teenagers waiting in line to enter the arcade. He decided that an arcade-themed film could tap into that market. And the topless girls playing video games was named number 7 on its top 20 gratuitous nude scenes of the 80s by the website Flashback in July of 2014. Yes, there is some nudity in this. Have you heard of this film, Lacey?
I remember it vaguely. I feel like it was much better done later on when they called it Empire Records.
Or, in my opinion, Pixels.
Loved Pixels. Everyone hated it. I loved it.
Lacey, do you never speak disparagingly of Rex Manning Day?
No. Absolutely not. Love the Rex Manning Day.
All right, guys. The next one I can't find anywhere. And I was very curious about it. And this is Tough Enough. And this movie stars Dennis Quaid, Charlene Watkins, and Stan Shaw, directed Richard Fleischer, an aspiring country western singer whose money is disappearing faster than his career opportunities, enters a tough man amateur boxing contest to earn some cash to pay his bills. Amazingly enough, he wins it, and he picks it to go. He is picked to go on to the national finals. He's torn between his first love, music, and the glitz and glamour of the money of the tough man world. This movie is the last film of actor Warren Oates. God, that was tough to get out. His last film was actually filmed before Oates' previous film, Blue Thunder, 1983, but was first released stateside about a week after that movie. Warren Oates passed away. Have you guys seen this at all? Anybody hear this?
No.
Yeah, I remember it vaguely on, HBO or something late, in the weird times, like Sunday morning or something where no one's home watching TV, that kind of thing. I can't really tell you any more about it.
Gotcha. Well,
I remember it being on. I don't remember the plot or whatever.
Dennis Quaid broke his nose during the making of this film, as he had done all 3 years previously in The Long Riders in 1980. And Dennis Quaid had himself in a real life had been an amateur boxer for 8 years. Roger Ebert, I'm going to throw some Roger Ebert reviews out there because I found some that were kind of interesting. And he gave us 3 out of 4 stars, thumbs up. So it's a nice little movie about tough guy contest. It's sneaking into town during the media barrage of Return of the Jedi. So that was up against that. And it's likely nobody will ever hear about it, but it's a goofy entertainment that has some good moments and a couple of interesting characters. Just one of those weird films, guys, that just never made it to, replay and movie like, HBO and stuff like that. So, yeah. All right, guys. Next, we have The Entity horror film starring Barbara Hershey, Ron Silver, and David Labiosa. A woman is tormented and sexually molested by an invisible demon. That's all that IMDb says. I have not seen this film, but Martin Scorsese included this movie in his top 11 scariest horror films of all time. The paranormal and supernatural events depicted in this movie purportedly first took place in 1974, which was around 7 to 8 years before this film was made and released. And the real-life Carl Morgan's teenage son described as particularly vicious attack in which Carla was thrown by the malevolent force and hit her head. He tried to intervene, but he was also thrown, breaking his arm. In the filming of the movie, the actor played the son, broke his arm in that scene, and the curtains tore from top to bottom without explanation. So I guess this is based on a true story, guys. Any thoughts on this? Do you guys remember this, Lacey?
Ooh, see, horror and also like ghost rape, so not really my thing.
Yeah, not me neither. Kyle, do you remember this at all?
Not really. And also, to be honest with you, I'm not a huge Barbara Hershey fan.
Yeah, apparently she got decent reviews regarding her performance in this, but this one just did not jump out at me at all. So now there is a filmmaker that is hit or miss with me. Videodrome. This came out. A programmer at a TV station that specializes in adult entertainment searches for the producers of a dangerous and bizarre broadcast. And this is a David Cronenberg film. This stars James Woods, Debbie Harry, yes, that Debbie Harry from Blondie, and Sonia Smits. I had not seen this film, guys, until I finally picked it up used on DVD at a thrift store. I did watch this film. It is very creepy. 3 different endings were filmed. The ending used in the film was James Wood's idea, apparently. And David Cronenberg had to double James Wood for the scene in which Max Wren puts a helmet on his head because they were both afraid at the point that it might be electrocuted by it. And the majority of the trailer was created with a Commodore 64 in this. But what was interesting, though, was the makeup effects of some of the weird stuff that was going on here. I think this was Baker work, Rick Baker stuff, and it was very good, but very, very creepy. Kyle, did you see Videodrome?
I remember seeing Videodrome on cable back in the day. I remember being completely creeped out by it. It is a very bizarre James Woods performance, too. The thing I also know about this movie has a very interesting cult following. Of course, it is David Cronenberg, so you've got his cult there, but James Woods has a very interesting kind of cult phenomenon with his fans too. So it's emerging of 2 very interesting things, and I've had many people talk about this movie to me in just very strange conversations, and I'm just like, it's your thing, man. Do what you're gonna do, because this is a bizarre and creepy film.
Yeah, David Cronenberg, most of his movies are misses for me. There's been a few hits like Eastern Promises and my favorite, A History of Violence.
Mm-hmm.
But he's done some weird stuff. And recently he's had a reoccurring role on Star Trek Discovery. Lacey, have you seen Videodrome? And follow up, are you a Cronenberg fan at all, or is he weird to you too?
Um, okay, so in effort to get past my fear of horror movies, when I was in film school, I actually took a horror class, and they had a whole section on body horror, which would be this and things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that kind of thing, like the true gore of body horror.
Right.
And no, ooh, awful, horrible, never again. No, thank you. Um, on a different note, I did later on work in a talent agency where James Woods called in one afternoon, and I answered the phone, sent him to whoever he was talking to, and then he called back to say that he was just very nice. He was like, I just wanted to say that most of the time when you call places like this, the person's just like, yep, click, and you were just very delightful. So he complimented me, and I loved it, and he was very nice. And now he's got a fan in me forever.
Funny little trivia about this too is David Tabushi, who appeared briefly as a Japanese porn dealer, later became a minister in the Ontario provincial government. I'm assuming that's Canada. His appearance in this controversial film as a pornographer was exploited by the opposition. That's kind of funny. The Fly was good. A lot of people like that movie. I don't find it rewatchable. Extends, I think it was called. That was a decent movie as well. But yeah, History of Violence, though, brilliant film. Also 90 minutes, great running time, perfectly edited, in my opinion. All right, guys. Now this one technically came out in December of '83, but it did have some other releases in December of '82. It came out in limited release, but then came out in '83 as a full release, although it didn't make a lot of money, even though when they tried, only made under $3 million. And this is called The King of Comedy. And I found this streaming for free online, guys, because I was kind of curious about it, because it's a Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese directed film. And as you know, Scorsese and De Niro have been working together for a very, very long time. This co-stars Jerry Lewis playing a version of himself, but a different character, and Diane Abbott, and who else was in that? A bunch of other people. But Martin Scorsese said that he thought Robert De Niro's best performance under his direction was in this film. I don't know if I'd go that way, guys, but I'll tell you this. If you've seen the 2019 movie The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, who also co-stars in that film, Robert De Niro, this has very similar feels and plot points in these films, because it's basically about a stand-up comedian that wants to make it so big, and he wants to perform his shtick on Jerry Lewis's late night talk show, because he's like the number one talk show host. Kind of think Johnny Carson at the time, right? And if you guys remember that one episode of Seinfeld where I'm drawing a blank on it. Kramer makes a talk show host room in his apartment. Well, De Niro does that in this film in a more creepy way. He actually even has like a fake audience picture put up. He has like a guest chair with like Liza Minnelli next to him and a paper cardboard cutout. It's just so weird. And he goes out of his way to where he kidnaps Jerry Lewis's character to get him to go on the show, so the police will allow him to perform on the show. And then he's arrested afterwards. It is really weird. It's dark. I recommend it in a certain way, but man, it's a little creepy when you compare it to The Joker. Kyle, have you heard of this film?
Oh, I've heard of this film. I saw this for a film class when I was in college. That's probably the last time I saw it. And the Joker comparison, the Joker comparison fits very well. In fact, a lot of people consider the Joker almost a modern day remake of this film.
Yeah.
This is not a happy film in any sense of the word. This movie is downright depressing at times, and it's the same reason like the Joker. Even though Joker is kind of trying to be a comic book based movie with the Joker aspect of it and things like that, it is not a rewatchable film. this is a lot of people rave about it because of the Scorsese De Niro, but no, this falls into okay. I've seen it. Okay, I can say I've seen it. Move along.
Yeah. Lacey, have you seen this?
I haven't seen this. I haven't seen Joker, and I haven't watched but maybe like 4 minutes of Seinfeld. So I got nothing on this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, the other actor that was in this was Sandra Bernhard, who of course is a actress but a comedian, and she played the cohort with Robert De Niro. And there's a scene where they are arguing in the street, and 3 of the street scum punks are Mick Jones, Joe Strummer, and Paul Simon, members of the British punk rock band The Clash. Roger Ebert says The King of Comedy is one of the most arid, painful, and wounded movies he had ever seen. And he also said it's basically it felt like it almost felt like a companion movie to Taxi Driver. To be honest with you, it was pretty interesting. So. The next movie, however, was much more endearing, entertaining, and that is Local Hero. I was told about this movie actually by my good friend Stevie McLeod, who is from Scotland, because this movie takes place in Scotland. And it's one of the films that is revered by the Scottish people. And it's about an American oil company that has plans for a new refinery and sends someone to Scotland to buy up an entire village. But things don't go as expected. Directed by Bill Forsyth, starring Burt Lancaster, Peter Riegert, Fulton McKay. And I got to tell you guys, very, very fun movie. And I just want to give a shout out to my friend Jonathan Melville, who is an author. And we've had him on our Blooded Kings Highlander podcast because he wrote the Making of Highlander book called A Kind of Magic. And he actually he wrote a book about the making of Local Hero. And he's selling it now. It's on Amazon. Make sure you check it out. Very nice film, filmed on location in Scotland. And I'm forgetting the name of the actor, Kyle, who plays Wedge Antilles. Oh, Dennis Lawson.
Yeah.
From Star Wars fame. He also has a small part in it. He plays the local innkeeper. And it's there's a famous red telephone box there that's now become a tourist attraction for fans that know of this movie. It's very, very cute, very fun. The characters are great. And Peter Riegert, who is the main star of this film, starts to learn this from these people. Has anyone else seen this? Kyle, Lacey?
I have not seen this, but it is something I wouldn't mind checking out because I heard you talk about it with Jonathan Melville, and I know you told me a little bit about his thoughts on it off mic. And so, yeah, it's something I would like to check out.
Lacey.
Yes. You recommended it a week ago, so I got the Criterion version on Blu-ray.
Nice.
Loved the fact that it was a fairly darkly lit and naturally lit film, but the color
That's Scotland for you.
Right, but the color palette was very bright. So it was like bright colors on dark backgrounds, which is a very different way to film. And I know that I haven't listened to the commentary yet, but I feel like they're going to talk about that's what you end up with when you want bright colors in Scotland when it rains a lot. I felt like Burt Lancaster's character was very much the Elon Musk of it all. Like that's
a good point. Yeah,
it was very much like the head guy is interested in finding a comet and learning about the comets and all this. And he's very he's into astrology. It was a very weird kind of CEO situation. And the one thing about the movie that really just didn't fit for me was there's a therapist that's using like anger therapy, but he's attacking his ego. Like the CEO hires
not physically attacking him.
Right, but the CEO hires this therapist to keep him in his place and to insult him.
Right.
Just really strange.
Yeah, that was quirky. I have it on Laserdisc too, just because it's one of those fun movies that I like to revisit from time to time since I was told about it. Roger Ebert liked it.
Oh,
what's
sorry.
that?
I was gonna say there's a lot of good supplemental material on the Criterion.
Gotcha. Roger Ebert liked it. He says it's a small. He says that what could have been a standard plot about conglomerates and ecology turns instead into a wicked study of human nature. So yeah.
I will say
Definitely check
that
it out.
it's really fun. Both of us really love this movie, and it's the same producers as Chariots of Fire, and all three of us were like, ew, 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 it's awful.
Yeah. Oh God, Chariots of Fire could not get through that film. All right, guys. Next film, interesting film. I found it. I have it on DVD here. This is Lords of Discipline, and there's a reason why I was drawn to this film. It takes place in 1960s America. A black cadet is allowed acceptance into a seemingly prestigious military academy, unfortunately unleashing a barrage of corruption within the system that another cadet is willing to expose. And when I say unfortunately, this black cadet is hazed horribly in this. That is run by a bunch of racist cadets and is being sanctioned by one of their officers, basically. And David Keith is great in this. He got this role because of his role in Officer and a Gentleman. And it's directed by Frank Rodham. And Pat Conroy based the source novel on a 1907 incident in which a group of military cadets at a distinguished naval and military college banded together to form a secret society. Every year, 10 or more cadets were added. When the society was exposed after several years, the original cadets were now influential people occupying a number of positions of power. And Bill Paxton is in this film. And he met his second wife in this, by the way. And also, it's the theatrical debut of Matt Fuhrer. Guys, I found something else interesting about this film was that when they were trying to find real military schools to film this, they were all denied the ability to do that because of the topic. So they actually had to film this in London, which I found interesting. And there's a lot of people that start popping up that you start recognizing in this. Michael Biehn is in this. Rick Rossovich. I was almost kind of like a little like Navy SEALs, like Top Gun reunion of a lot of these actors that you see. And of course, Bill Paxton is in this as well. It is a tough movie to watch, but there's some great drama in this. And David Keith was great in this. He was the one that is trying to stop what's happening to this African-American guy and expose this corruption stuff. I don't know if I could rewatch it a lot, but I do recommend it at least once because it does kind of touch on the secret society that a lot of these, unfortunately, schools, in addition to these military schools, have had, and they've tried to squash the violent portrayal of initiation and hazing and stuff like that. Have you guys heard of this film?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. A shout out to our good friend Matt Clifton. Yes, this film is Paxinated, as Kevin said. Like you said, it's when I was looking at it, when I was reviewing the notes, the cast in this is so interesting and bizarre. There's so many that guy names.
Yes.
Here, and you were talking about it, like Matt Fuhrer in his theatrical debut, Rick Rossovich, just names that you kind of know, but they never really.
Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn,
yeah,
Judge Reinhold,
yeah, and Aliens and stuff. And what I find interesting too is when I had Jonathan Melville, who had wrote the book about Local Hero and of course Highlander, found out too that David Keith actually was one of the actors they were looking at as possibly to play Connor McLeod for Highlander.
Interesting.
Later on, so yeah. Next film I have not seen, guys, but seems like Dudley Moore was everywhere. This was Lovesick, starring Dudley Moore and Elizabeth McGovern. A psychiatrist, who falls in love with his patient, is visited by the spirit of Sigmund Freud, who gives him advice on how to handle it. And Sigmund Freud is played by Alec Guinness, which I find fascinating, which makes me kind of want to see this. But it's not streaming anywhere. I don't even know if I've seen a VHS or whatever hard copy of this film. This movie
on DVD.
You have it on DVD, so it does exist.
I do indeed.
Oh wow!
Well,
okay.
it is Dudley Moore, and so we know Lacey is our Dudley Moore expert.
Well, this movie is credited with creating the aluminum foil hat for paranoid conspiracy people. This was originally intended as a project for Peter Sellers, but of course he passed away in 1980. And this is the final live-action appearance in a Hollywood theatrical movie for John Huston. Lacey, your thoughts on Lovesick? Is it worth it?
It's cute. It's definitely dated, right? It's definitely dated. The outlook of a therapist having a relationship with his patient, but there's also kind of that 1980s. Definitely, like there's some gender role issues, where I don't know. It's very much a male-driven film. I'll just put it that way. As far as the writing and everything, you can tell that there's a lot of depressive talk about women.
One of my favorite actresses, Christine Baranski, is in it, and she also is in the recent HBO show, The Gilded Age, and she plays the nymphomaniac, which I thought was kind of funny in this. Do you think I would like it, Lacey, out of curiosity? You know me.
I think you would like it if you take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it's funny for
I can do that
time period.
Yeah.
So if you kind of get yourself in the mood for the 83 sort of stuff, I think you'll like it. Yeah.
Kyle, have you seen Lovesick?
It's Dudley Moore, so no.
No. All right, guys.
Sorry.
But it's also Alec Guinness. I mean, you can Alec Guinness wins all the time.
Yeah, I kind of want to see him as Freud or as Frood dude, some people would say. All right, guys. The next one I tried to find because oh wait, Kyle, yes.
Oh no, I have something for this movie, but do you know for the Pirates of Penzance? But do your introduction because there's something I want to dive into.
Okay, you don't start waving right when I'm talking, dude. Come on, man. It's like I almost forgot something here. All right, here we go. All right. You must be excited about this, Kyle. You know what?
No, it's going to be fun and interesting.
Go ahead.
Okay. For all of those of you who were complaining during COVID with date and day release films like Dune, where it would come into theaters and go right on streaming, and thought this was something that was new for COVID, this movie tanked in the theaters, and it tanked because it was one of the first films that tried to do a day and date streaming kind of thing, because not only was this movie released in theaters, it was released on a kind of like a pay-per-view type service called Select TV, and theater owners weren't happy, so they blackballed this movie.
That's interesting you say that, because that is fascinating that theaters are like, nah, you ain't gonna do that to us. Lacey, I really kind of wanted to see this film because, first of all, it has Kevin Kline in it, right, as the star. And you made reference to it of the pirate movie kind of had that we talked about in 82, had kind of a Pirates of Penzance feel to it. And this also was a play as well. It stars Angela Lansbury, Linda Ronstadt. And it's about a young man who leaves a band of pirates and hilarity ensues. And although the chorus consisted of British performers, they all lip sync to the American singers from the original Broadway production. And Kevin Kline won a 1980 Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical for the Pirates of Penzance Broadway. But Kyle, did you know there's also a Pirates of Penzance linked to one of our favorite 1982 films? And that would be Megaforce, because the lead star of Megaforce, this handsome gentleman right over my shoulder right here. Oh, yes. What's his name, Kyle? You know.
His name is Ace.
Ace. Yes. But what's his real name, Kyle? What's his real name?
That would be Barry.
Barry Bostwick, yeah. Performing live on stage, and the wife of the director saw him performing, and he says in an interview that he was performing this, and he had this blue headband that he had, which he wears in Megaforce. He takes this off his head and he throws it to usually the prettiest lady nearby in the front row. He threw it to this wife, the director of Megaforce, and he was performing Pirates of Penzance. So there you go. Lacey, your thoughts on Pirates of Penzance?
It's delightful. Everyone should see this movie. I don't want to say anything else. I feel like anything that I'm going to say is going to ruin it, just because it's one of those that's kind of timeless, but it's lovely and it's musical. I mean, it's delightful and I love it. And it is the basis it is the Send Up. It's the original of the Send Up, which is the pirate movie, which is one of my favorite movies ever.
It's not streaming anywhere. I can't find it anywhere.
It's on DVD for like $12 on Amazon.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to buy that.
I think streaming issues have to do with some rights issues because of the Broadway play, and there's
Possibly.
some hang-ups there on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember seeing this on cable at one point, and it's fun, and Kevin Kline in the role is definitely makes it worthwhile seeing.
And the score is great too. I mean, it's a musical, but the score is really, kind of got that fun action score that it's great.
Gotcha. All right, guys. The next one is one of the sex comedies I was going to talk to you about. That's My Tutor. My Tutor. Now, I want to mention real quick. The first one we talked about was Joysticks, of course. That one made $4 million. My Tutor made $22.5 million. And that is a lot of money for these low budget sex comedies here. And this is about a rich father who hires a tutor for his son. The son is a horny teenager, and the tutor is a gorgeous blonde. Complications ensue, of course. And Kevin McCarthy is the father here, and this stars Matt Lattanzi and Karen Kay. At the time this movie was made, Matt Lattanzi was in a relationship with Olivia Newton-John. They would marry in 1984, a year after it was released. The pair divorced in 1995. What's interesting, too, is this the debut cinema movie of actors Crispin Glover, Bruce Bauer, and Amber Denise Austin. And portraying a call girl, Anna Marie was Kitten Natividad, who was a stripper, playmate, centerfold, and Miss Nude Universe twice. Guys, I got to be honest with you. I actually found this movie kind of endearing. It was cute. Kevin McCarthy played kind of like the creepy father who also hit on the tutor as well. But I like the fact that the tutor actually liked the kid, wasn't trying to take advantage of him. He was doing the creepy stuff too at first, like looking in her window and watching her swim. And of course, there was the, couple of nude scenes where she's swimming and stuff like that. You get that, of course. But it was funny. And Crispin Glover, who played the friend in this, I thought was very funny. He definitely looked a part in this. This, of course, is one of the many movie 80s tropes of the older woman, tutoring the younger boy in the ways of sex, and that was a thing. But of the ones that I've seen, I think I like this one the best. I'm just saying. Kyle, have you seen My Tutor?
I don't think I have seen My Tutor. Just reading about it though, and it kind of feels it's playing a little bit on some of the risky business kind of thing.
Yes, definitely had a risky business vibe to it. Yes,
but I mean, again, this is 80s sex comedy alert time because this falls right perfectly into the type of films they're putting out over these probably 4 or 5 year period in the 80s where you were guaranteed at least 3 or 4 of these every year, if not more.
Lacey, do you remember this one?
I remember vaguely seeing it, obviously later on because 9-year-old, not that kind of content. But it had I kind of think I saw it in a block around the time of, Oxford Blues, Secret Admirer, My Tutor, right. Educating Rita, things like that, where it was all kind of the older and the younger and the, yeah.
Keep in mind, yeah, I know a lot of us didn't see these when they came out in the theater because of the age time thing. But you have to keep in mind, these were huge rentals later on, even years later, because
late night cable too.
Yeah. And even if you weren't of age when this came out, when you were of age, it was available on VHS or Betamax or Laserdisc. And we were watching these. We were wanting to see boobs, basically. We wanted to see Skinamax.
Skinamax after like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m.
Yeah. So you know what? If I said you've seen this, obviously I'm referring to whether you didn't see it in the theater or in the drive-in, you definitely saw it later on home video or in home theater and stuff like that. So this was definitely one of those that made the round. So yeah. This is a film I have not seen, guys. I could have bought it for like close to $15 or $20 on DVD, but I didn't want to pull that trigger. But I was kind of curious about it, just because of who's in it here. Robert Forster and Fred Williamson star in Vigilante. After his wife and son got brutalized by a street gang and a corrupt criminal justice system puts the attackers back on the street, a New York City factory worker teams up with a vigilante group to find Measure of Bloody Justice, directed by William Lustig. Many of the chase sequences, including the climactic car chase, were inspired by other films. I guess I cut that off there. The film was re-released in most markets, such as Detroit, Chicago, and Pittsburgh, to name a few, under the title Street Gang, which director William Lustig was completely against by the distributor. The original title was restored for a special double feature billing with another exploitation film called Chained Heat in December of 1983, which we'll be getting to that a little bit later on. The film was very popular overseas, such as Scandinavia, Germany, and in particular England, where it was the #1 video rental for 6 months. The only place, according to director William Lustig, that the film didn't do anything was in Japan. Fred Williamson, I'm a fan of, guys. Have you heard of this film, Lacey?
Yeah, okay, so when it came out under Vigilante, that was around the time that I was discovering Keanu Reeves and going back and seeing all the things that he had been in. And he was in a movie called Act of Vengeance, which I mistook for the film Vigilante. And then we got like almost the very end of it before I was like, where is he? He's not in this movie. This is not And so I accidentally watched this movie. And it's very much like, it's kind of like the movie Class of '84. It's very much a group of teenagers doing their bad things, or
a teenage gang, basically.
The thugs, and there's it's not a rape, it's a murder. It's different circumstances, but it's the same thing. It's a guy who goes off the rails and decides that he's going to get his vengeance. So,
Kyle,
I have not seen this film, but you have me at Fred the Hammer Williamson, one of the most underrated NFL to Hollywood actors out there. I love Fred Williamson. He's done a lot of films, and he had a run there from like the 70s through the 80s that was just pretty impressive of what he did.
Film did a little small. The film did like $5 million, I guess. That's not obviously a huge success, but it made some money there. All right, guys, the next film I actually have playing right now because I was able to find it. And that is 10 to Midnight, starring Charles Bronson. Made a little over $7 million in the theaters. Cannon Group film, by the way. An LAPD detective and his rookie partner on a trail of a psychopathic young man who is murdering young women. Starring Charles Bronson, Lisa Eilbacher, and Andrew Stevens. The original script called for Leo Kessler to wrestle Warren Stacy to the ground in their final confrontation, but Charles Bronson wasn't getting that up close and personal with a naked man. And what I find interesting is he's getting a lot of work as he gets a little bit older here. Charles Bronson was 61 at the time, had plastic surgery in order to make himself look younger to play Leo Kessler. So there you go. And I'm watching it in the background. Yes, you get your nudity in here, but man, it gets nasty. A lot of killer against this guy's pretty mean towards women. Just going to put that out there. I don't think Roger Ebert liked it. He gave it a thumbs down. This is a scummy little sewer of a movie, a cesspool that lingers sadistically on shots of killer, terrifying and killing helpless women, and then is shamelessly enough to end with an appeal to law and order. Yeah, I kind of have it playing in the background. Not impressed by it, but I do have it here because I think this is one of those kind of Charles Bronson films that has kind of an iconic look when it comes to the poster. But he's done so many of these type of films. This is one I think you can skip. Kyle,
this is about the time Charles Bronson started to go over the deep end. And his movie choices after this were.
Do you mean his paycheck movies?
Yeah, his paycheck movies. I mean, this was, but I mean, even still, he was getting weirder and weirder. I mean, like you said, he had the plastic surgery to look younger for this. I also just want a quick shout out because this is a very young Andrew Stevens in this film. Andrew Stevens was one of those 80s that guy kind of actors, but Andrew Stevens has a whole other notch where he had his own production company and did a lot of movies with Shannon Tweed, to the point where he was casting himself a lot with Shannon Tweed, which I don't know if Gene sat well with Gene Simmons or not.
All right, guys. The next film I really did want to watch because I know I'd seen this before in a television broadcast of it, and that is Trenchcoat. And this was a comedy kind of spy type movie in theatrical release, made a little over $4 million. And this stars Margot Kidder, Robert Hayes, directed by Michael Tuchner. The film was produced by Walt Disney Pictures, known for its family fare, yet since it contains adult themes that some felt were inappropriate for the studio's image, the Disney name appears nowhere on the film. Disney ultimately created the Touchstone Pictures brand in order to release more adult fare movies. And creator Rita Latkin became the first female showrunner of a television series, part of this thing. And the Walt Disney Studios picture, this Walt Disney Studios picture, a spoof of detective film noir and mystery movies, followed on the heels of Disney's Condor Man from 1981, which was also a spoof of a superhero movies released a couple of years earlier. I really wanted to watch this. I was considering spending the money to buy it on iTunes, Kyle. But then I was like reading Roger Ebert reviews, and I don't always agree with him. But, you know, when you just need something to kind of break the tiebreaker a little bit when you're deciding to watch it again, he gave it a thumbs down. He says, this is one of the most tired, predictable, uninteresting movies in a long time. All that prevented him from giving it no stars instead of 1 star was that he saw From 10 to Midnight soon afterwards. The movie that we just spoke of. Kyle, do you remember this movie, Trenchcoat?
I remember hearing about it. I never saw it, and this movie is actually kind of well known in the aspect of, it was one of the movies that caused Disney to found Touchstone Pictures, because Disney was just like, where are we going with our movies at this point? Because you got to remember, you had Condor Man at this point, Dragon Slayer was coming soon, where Disney was doing these films and putting out these films that they were like, like
Down and Out in Beverly Hills, I think was a Touchstone film, and it was like one of the most successful released under that Touchstone version or Touchstone's subsidiary.
Because subsidiary. But if you think about it, at the height of Touchstone Pictures, there was not a lot of stuff coming out from Disney Studios itself. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. Lacey, do you remember Trenchcoat?
I do. I vaguely remember it from, obviously like kind of late night TV somewhere, or I feel like I saw a television version, a network TV version, because there were chunks that made me not understand what was going on. Like maybe it was one of those overly edited ones. But I haven't seen it since, and I did look for it, but I couldn't find it on. It's the DVD is currently unavailable, and it's been unavailable since I started looking for it.
Yeah. Subsidiary is one of those words I'm having trouble with. All right, guys. The next one is High Road to China, starring Tom Selleck and Bess Armstrong. Made almost $29 million. During World War I, an alcoholic American biplane pilot is hired by the spoiled daughter of an industrialist to find her father, who disappeared in Asia. Also starring Jack Weston, Wilford Brimley, and I had to throw this in here, Terry Richards. He played the sword-wielding Arab character in Raiders of the Lost Ark that Indiana Jones decided not to fight and said just shoot. And this is the first major starring role in a cinema movie for actor Tom Selleck. And Bess Armstrong, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of her stuff when I was trying to remember this, but I really liked her in this. She was very charming. And I was trying to remember like what I had seen her in. And she's done a lot of like episodic television, and I forgot that she was in My So-Called Life. I think she was the mom. She was in Jaws 3D as well. A bunch of other things as well. But I really liked her in this. I thought she was cute. And I thought the chemistry between the two is good too. And she said once of her co-star Tom Selleck while doing publicity for this picture, quote, "He is real gorgeous and he has some real power now, but he doesn't use it or his charm to exploit women. He generally seems to like women. For an actor, that's rare." I thought that was really cool. This movie, I just felt like, though, that it just should have been an Indiana Jones movie. And we all know he was up for being Indiana Jones, but because of his, ties, his contract and ties to Magnum PI and such, didn't get the chance to do it. I felt like this was his chance to try and at least get that type of feel. And in an oral history interview with the writer Stephen Vogt, that regarding the book, novelist John Cleary had said of his film adaptation of High Road to China novel that the film was one of his greatest disappointments of his career. Clearly felt that the novel should have been one of the great adventure films of all time. And Roger Ebert kind of touched on that, saying High Road to China is not a terrible movie, but it's a lifeless one. It follows some of the forms of Raiders of the Lost Ark without ever finding that comic rhythms. It's directed at a nice, steady pace, but without flair and without the feeling that anything's being risked. Kyle, your thoughts on High Road to China?
It was interesting. Obviously, Tom Selleck with everything with him, he should have done Raiders, and it actually leads me to a quick question. I want to ask both of you: did Tom Selleck really ever hit that movie in the cinematic movie stardom that he should have reached? Because I kind of look back at his career. He's had some great films and some great roles, but he never hit that superstardom you felt like he was going to hit in film. He obviously, TV's been a different thing between Magnum PI and Blue Bloods, but cinematically, I feel like he should have been a bigger star than what he was.
You go first, Lacey.
I think, this was around the time where if you were a film star, you were a celebrity, but if you were a television star, you were an actor. And there was that they didn't do a lot of crossover in the late 80s until George Clooney left ER to pursue a film career. That was kind of a thing that movie actors didn't do. You either got your chance in TV or you got your chance in film, and they didn't do a lot of crossover back then. So I don't know that it's a matter of him. I think he just got the role in television first. I think that they started, with Bruce Willis kind of broke out of Moonlighting, and Clooney left ER and all that kind of stuff. I think that kind of.
I think what Kyle's getting at, though, is he never really hit it huge as a movie star.
Well, my favorite movie with him is always going to be In and Out.
In and Out. That's
absolutely
a good one.
Hilarious. Yeah. With Kevin Kline. Yeah.
I would have to say my favorite is Quigley Down Under.
Yeah.
That's my favorite because of his charisma in that and the type of character that he plays. I liked him in Runaway as well. And he's done so many Westerns as well.
When he had the series,
Three Men and a Baby would be maybe his biggest success, but I don't call that a Tom Selleck movie because who he's co-starring with. Yeah. So I would have to go with Quigley Down Under. I don't know, Kyle, what do you think?
I agree with you. I think as far as him carrying a film, it's Quigley. I think like you said, Three Men and a Baby is probably his biggest cinematic blockbuster, I would say. But it just, like I said, it just feels like he's done good films, but he never really got that one film that really catapulted him in a cinematic sense.
Yeah,
he did have Her Alibi, right? He was in Her Alibi way back in the day. I think that was
one. Paulina Portskova, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That one should have been bigger, but it just didn't. Yeah. It didn't catch on, and no one talks about it anymore, and no one, rewatching it and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And the Jesse Stone movies, there's 8 or 12 of those.
Yeah, I know. And that's become a successful franchise for him, which is good. Mm-hmm. And I know he's been on Blue Bloods for a while now, doing his thing. So, all right, guys, the next film I just watched last night, I've seen it before, but it had been a while, and that is Bad Boys, the original Bad Boys, 1983. And I remember watching this for the first time, being kind of scared crapless of ever going to jail, and how gritty that it was. And of course, keep in mind, this is Sean Penn. Previously had done, Fast Times at Richmond High. And he plays the lead character going to jail basically for teenagers and young men. And he plays a Chicago crime kid. Mick O'Brien is sent to a reform school after accidentally killing a rival kid's brother. And I wouldn't call this a reform school. I just call this straight up jail. Director Rick Rosenthal, starring Rennie Santoni, Jim Moody, Esai Morales, Ali Sheedy, and Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon auditioned for this role, but it went to Sean Penn instead. And this is the debut film of actors Jason Gedrick, who is uncredited because he's like in the background, and I just noticed him by accident. Clancy Brown, the Kurgan himself from Highlander, Alan Ruck, Bueller, and actress Ali Sheedy. Tough film to watch, but it is good for the performances in this film. Highly recommend it. But like I said, it is a tough watch. Kyle, your thoughts on Bad Boys?
I gotta be honest with you, I've never seen this film.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not the biggest Sean Penn fan in the world. I know he gets a lot of critical acclaim for things, but some of his things. But yeah, he was never a draw to me for a film.
What about you, Lacey?
I'm not a Sean Penn fan, but that's because of the films he chooses. I like his funny stuff. I love Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's been a couple of movies here and there. I even like Shanghai Surprise. I thought it was funny and silly and whatever. But he does a lot of very, very dark, very gritty, very difficult films, and that's not something that I enjoy watching. So just as I don't watch his films, but I don't dislike him.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like he does so many things that are so dark and so like I couldn't watch. What's the one where he was Susan Sarandon, the Death Row one? I couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
It was like, this is supposed to be this amazing film. And it was just so. I got through like 15 minutes of it, and I was like, nope, I can't.
Let me tell you right now, it's funny you say that because I was trying to think of the Sean Penn movies that I find rewatchable. And the one I think his best role, honestly, in my opinion, is the Jewish lawyer that he plays in Carlito's Way. And he is such a scumbag in that movie, and he does it in such a fantastic way. He actually is like a gangster himself, the way that he does things, and he's so good in that. That's my favorite role. A couple of the iconic scenes in this, though, is when Clancy Brown, who's playing like the big tough that is kind of like the king of the jail, and when the movie changes where Sean Penn becomes that character because he takes a bunch of soda cans and puts them inside a pillowcase and just beats the crap out of him. And then things kind of come to a head, but yeah, it's a tough watch, but it's a really good film for a lot of the dramatic roles in that film. So, all right, guys, the next one I have not seen. I was never into the Black Stallion movies. I might have seen the original one. This is the Black Stallion Returns. And it's about a teenager who loses his horse in Morocco and gets him back after various daredevil adventures. I'm not familiar with a lot of the people in this, directed by Robert Dalva, starring Kelly Reno, Vincent Spano. That guy sounds familiar. And Alan Garfield. Lacey, you've seen Black Stallion Returns?
Yeah, I've seen it. It was cute. It was if you liked horses when you were 12 or 11 or 10 or whatever, it was a good movie. It had some scary bits, maybe not good for, maybe 10 and under, 8 and under. But it was a kid's adventure film.
Gotcha. All right. Kyle?
I remember seeing the original in like school. We watched the original, I think, but I've never seen the sequel. I'm like you. It doesn't really do much for me here.
The original was Mickey Rooney, right? The kid was the kid in the original was Mickey Rooney, right? Yeah.
This movie got some criticism for portraying Arabics, and Roger Ebert was not a fan of that. And the film was made in late 81, 4 years after the first film in 77. However, it was set only 1 year later, meaning Alec Ramsey had gone from being age 11 to 15 in only 1 year. This was a film that I was curious in trying to see, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And this one's called Eddie Macon's Run. And this one starred Kirk Douglas, John Schneider, and Lee Purcell. A young man harshly sentenced for a few minor infractions escapes from a prison in Huntsville, Texas, and flees to Laredo, Texas, where he hopes to cross into Mexico for a reunion with his wife and small son. I had not heard of this until I started doing the research on this. Lacey, have you heard of Eddie Macon's Run?
Yeah, I got it on Blu-ray. It is.
Tell me, how is it?
It's okay. It's a ridiculous film. It's ridiculous because the setup is absolutely like idiotic. there's no reason that he would have been actually. I mean, I know you always hear about the things that happened to the guy and he didn't whatever. He's not at fault, but the way they portrayed it was just it was very serious and it took itself too seriously. So that when halfway through the movie, there's some things that happen that are fairly comical, and then you go, "Oh no, why are we laughing right now?" Like I don't. Now, the acting was well done. I think it's a matter of script and direction. I don't think it's a matter of. I feel like everyone who signed on for it thought it was going to be this amazing, like gritty, you know, like a perfect film or whatever, one of those, and it just turned into something where the what's his name, the cop, Kirk Douglas got to show off his suit collection, and John Schneider got to be in tank tops a lot.
Well,
so
a little trivia here, which I thought was kind of sad, was source novelist James McClendon passed away about a year before the finished film of his source Eddie Macon's Run novel was made, because he released it in 80 and he didn't get a chance to see it. Debut theatrical.
I'm pretty sure he didn't miss much if he like I feel like there had to have been certain cuts or something made, because there were some plot points where it was like, wait, what now?
J.T. Walsh and John Goodman had their theatrical film debuts in this. So yeah, Kyle, have you heard of Eddie Macon's Run?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it, but I know this. This was at a time when John Schneider had been selected to be one of Hollywood's it people. They were trying to make him a superstar. After Dukes, he had the look. Just didn't quite have that level. I love John Schneider, but he wasn't there to be a superstar actor. But Hollywood damn sure tried to make him one.
There's another piece to that, though. I think that right around this time he found religion again. He was like reborn. So a lot of the scripts that he was doing and things that he had signed on to do, he wanted to like tone down certain aspects out of it, and he would accept the role, but then try and tone stuff down after the fact. And so I don't know, and that's like hearsay. I know I've seen it or read it somewhere, but I think that was a lot of the interviews that he did back then were very much about trying to family orient certain things that probably wouldn't necessarily be family oriented.
Yeah. Well, guys, the next film I know we've probably all seen. It was a huge hit, especially when you think about the cast that was in this. And this is The Outsiders. They grew up on the outside of society. They were looking for a fight. They were looking to belong. And of course, this is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. The rivalry between two gangs, the poor greasers and the rich socks, only heats up when one gang member kills a member of the other. Of course, based on the S.E. Hinton novel, screenplay by Catherine Rowell. Stars a plethora of young guys, including C. Thomas Howell, Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Emilio Estevez, Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon, Patrick Swayze. I'm missing one more. Who else am I missing?
Leif Garrett.
No, I thought there was one more. Wasn't there one more?
Tom Cruise. C. Thomas Howell.
No,
Emilio Estevez.
I feel like I'm missing one more person.
Matt Dillon.
I said Matt Dillon.
Swayze.
Patrick
Swayze. Rob Lowe. Thank you.
Oh.
And Diane Lane.
Yeah.
Diane Lane. Yes. Thank you. Oh, God, she was so cute in this. Okay, guys. So I actually just watched this for the first time last year with my wife. She's like, you haven't seen The Outsiders? I said, no. And I actually picked up a used DVD copy. Oh, sorry. I got the wrong picture up here. Wait, come back to that one. Yeah. And I watched it and I thought it was really, really good. But what really surprised me about this film was, first of all, this is basically, in my opinion, C. Thomas Howell's best performance. Him and Ralph Macchio are the lead actors in this because it's their story. They're the ones that go on the run here. But I got to tell you, C. Thomas Howell kills it in this film. Literally, he's really, really good in this film. Your thoughts, Lacey?
It's a great film. It's I remember I read the book first. I think I had to read the book in like 8th grade or something. I don't think I saw it until obviously later on. And I think I probably watched it because all the cute boys were in it. And then I was very upset because they were all like covered in dirt, and I was like, that's not even like the good dirty. Like I don't know, it was weird. Anyway, the film's good, but again, it's the drama, and that's not really my thing. But I enjoyed it when I saw it. I don't think it's something I'd watch again because it is it's not really a happy ending.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
Kyle, Outsiders.
Oh, I'm going to be bold here because I think this is the best and most important film in this batch of films that we're covering on this episode of Time Warp. I think
that's not a bold thing to say, considering what we've been talking about, Kyle.
I mean, just because I know that as important as this movie is for the actors as well, I mean, and so many young actors being in this, I mean, I remember hearing the casting stories about this on other podcasts where like everybody wanted to be in The Outsiders. It was like a huge deal here, but like you said, Kevin, I mean, not only an amazing performance by C. Thomas Howell, I think it's one of Matt Dillon's best performances, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant performance by Ralph Macchio in this film as well.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, C. Thomas Howell and Ralph Macchio were the youngest actors on the set, and they were pulling these performances out. And you know, the book is actually a very good book. I remember reading in the 8th grade as well, Lacey, and I actually watched the film, and that was the first time I saw the film. But you really look back at this and the group of actors that come out of this and how they defined the next decade of films is just absolutely mind-blowing, because I don't think we've had too many movies like this one where you had such, just from top to bottom, you know, we've had some that have 3 or 4 guys in or something. This one from top to bottom just filtered through so many films throughout the rest of the 80s and early 90s. It's ridiculous.
So would we say this is the birth of the Brat Pack?
You know, it depends. You know, it's funny that it's always been brought up regarding the Brat Pack because my wife said the same thing. But I don't know. It's weird because there's other people that are in the considered part of the Brat Pack that aren't in this film.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe, yes, I guess. But you could also say this is where like a bunch of leading men all started out together. And Kyle, you're right, man. That's a huge point that you made about impact that you said that these guys have in film in the next 10 years. It's remarkable.
I would say that this movie is the precursor to the Brat Pack. I wouldn't call it the birth of the Brat Pack because there's a lot of the actresses who were also in the Brat Pack that came a little later. But you look at half this cast, they started showing up in Red Dawn and a few other things. So like I said, I think this is kind of the precursor as we lead into the era of the Brat Pack.
So this is the frat pack that came before the Brat Pack.
Yeah.
Probably. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about the picture of the poster is that you see a bunch of them kind of smiling and laughing. And, you know, it's a little deceiving with this poster because you think that you're going to see a lot of like good times, and you see a lot more bad times and good times in this film. And a little bit of trivia about that is in the poster of the film, the greasers, as they are in this film, are shown laughing as Johnny is smirking. This was a candid shot taken during the photo session in which the actors were supposed to look tough at the camera. What happened was that a crew member was approaching the food table off camera, and a stagehand said, "Hey, that's for the talent." When Leif Garrett went to the table, Ralph Macchio said, "Hey, Leif, that's for the talent." This comment cracked up the cast, and the photo was used.
What's kind of funny is there was an interview with Rob Lowe, I think, and he was talking about where they were all living at the time, and like almost all these guys were living like in the same apartment complex before they all got cast for The Outsiders.
Yeah.
And that was Ralph Macchio was like 20 when he did this, and he was playing like a 13 or 14-year-old, right?
Yeah, I think he was like him and Swayze were, I think, up like one of the
oldest ones.
Yeah. All right, guys. The next film is another teen sex comedy romp that is called Spring Break, and this one made almost $25 million. And it's two sets of 2 college guys spend a spring break together in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They have lots of fun in and out of the sun, starring Steve Bassett, Perry Lang, David Nell. I actually enjoyed this movie, guys. It had its moments. It was funny. It was filmed in location. It was silly, yes, it had your nudity, but what was funny was it had both the wet T-shirt contest, and then the guys also did their version, the wet man shirt contest, which was kind of funny. But this movie has a weird kind of black cloud hanging over it. Tammy Lynn Leopard, who played a female boxer in the movie, she was also a young model, disappeared on July 6, 1983 under suspicious circumstances in the area this film was at, and has never been heard from again. I actually went down into the true crime rabbit hole on this, and there's different reports of her, like, hanging out with certain people of ill repute, some drug dealers, and some people think that she got caught up in a wrong situation, and because of people that she knew, she was murdered. And they also thought that maybe there were couple of serial killers that were arrested and in jail that had done some crimes during this time against killing women. And they thought that maybe she was a victim of one of these. They can't prove that at all, but really weird side story to this, unfortunately. So you guys seen this, Kyle? Spring Break?
I have not seen this one.
Okay. The film's title track and theme song, Spring Break, was sung by Cheap Trick, but failed to perform at the top of the Pop's hit charts. It was released as a vinyl single 45 on the B-side, being a song track called Get Ready, which was not part of the movie soundtrack. Lacey, have you heard of this film?
I feel like I saw this kind of in a block with, like, Hard Bodies and like a few other. So I know I've probably seen it, but I couldn't tell you. Yes, for sure.
Well,
the famous group of
the famous poster of these kids holding up a sign, Spring Break, of course, is a comedy version of the famous flag being raised in Iwo Jima. But these kids are raising it on the thighs of this young lady who's wearing a bikini. But here's the ironic part of this poster. That model who modeled for that picture is the woman that I spoke of earlier, Tammy Lynn Leopard. So, yeah.
Wow.
All right. Next, we've got Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. This movie made about $15 million in the theaters. A comedy team takes a look at all life in its stages of their own in a uniquely silly way, of course, directed by Terry Jones and Terry Gilliam. And, of course, starring all of the Monty Python guys, of course, John Cleese, Terry Gilliam, Eric Idle. I got to tell you guys, I don't remember this movie at all. I've seen several of their other films, but this one, I don't know. It's just one of those I never seen. It didn't seem to be playing on repeat a lot. Of course, the Holy Grail, Monty Python, the Holy Grail, is the one that's probably the most famous. And I just never got around to watching it. Lacey, where do you stand on Monty Python, and have you seen this film?
Yes, out of the four main Python films, I'd say this is probably number 4.
Gotcha.
It was more of it felt like the sketch show, and they tried to kind of like, it felt like one of those albums where they decide to make a movie out of a full album. It felt like they were doing a sketch show, and they were like, hey, these are all similar. We could put these in a movie together and put like little pieces between them and make it a story. There is a fair amount of there's a lot of humor in the songs. I would say that the soundtrack is the best part of this film. There's a song called Every Sperm is Sacred, which is hilarious.
Apparently that's probably the most memorable scene in the film from the
right.
research.
And then Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. Eric Idle it's a fantastic song. Everyone knows whatever it's called. What was it called? You just said it.
Monty Python, the Holy Grail.
Holy Grail, yeah. And then it's Life of Brian. Now for something completely different, and then this would probably be the least likely one to watch. Yeah.
Well, when you brought up the song "Every Sperm is Sacred," apparently the kids who sang in "Every Sperm is Sacred" sketch later said that they had no idea what they were singing about. That was funny. Kyle, your thoughts on Monty Python, and do you remember this movie?
I remember this movie. It's been a very, very long time since I've seen this film. This was probably the film that started. Monty Python was definitely kind of helped them lose steam in the U.S. for a while, and I think it was kind of a comeback of Monty Python and the Holy Grail in the early '90s, and a lot of the Monty Python sketch show when it was re-airing on like BBC and stuff like that. That Monty Python started kind of getting that resurgence again. But I think with this film, I think even if you talk to if you were to ask most of the members of Monty Python, they'd say, "Yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that."
All right, guys. So we are here at the cutting room floor. We've come to the end of our segment here, and we'll let's go ahead and get into that. So just a brief message or a brief mention of the films that we have here that are on the cutting room floor that we're not going to spend any time on. And that is, of course, Getting It On. It's the funniest, sexiest, craziest comedy around. Another sex comedy romp. Out of curiosity, the reason why I'm quitting, or I didn't even go for this one, it made less than $1 million. And I'm not familiar with a lot of the people that are in this, but when it starts out an ordinary sex-starved teenager, you're pretty much in for a cookie-cutter version of the sex comedy there. So the next one, I think you had something you might want to mention about this one, Lacey. Baby, It's You. Had you seen this film?
Yeah, I've seen it a million years ago, and I've only seen it the one time. I remember thinking that it was weird because it's a comedy, but it looks like the cover of an Agatha Christie novel.
So it takes place in 1966 New Jersey high school. Jill and a new student Sheik from the other side of the tracks make their way into their first love romance. Rosanna Arquette is in it, and Vincent Spano.
Yeah. For some reason, I remember it being like advertised as a comedy.
Film debut of Matthew Modine, and it was dedicated to Dominic Dunn, who, of course, unfortunately, was killed, if I remember correctly.
Stalker.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. Was in this film apparently as well. So yeah. All right, guys. So none of these films made it into the top grossing movies of 1983. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I just wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts on this first batch of movies for 1983 Time Warp Movies and Pop Culture 40th Anniversary Part 1. Lacey, let's start with you.
Well, it basically showed that everyone under the age of 25 was sex crazed, and everyone over the age of 52 wanted to murder people.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. Kyle?
Looking at this group of movies, and Kevin, I know we've had this conversation before on other things. This is a classic look of how Hollywood handled movies during certain times of the year. And for a very long time, January through March was, let's dump it here because
yeah, that's a good point. let's dump it here and see what happens. Yep.
I mean, for the most part, 90% of these films, that was definitely, let's just dump it here and whatever happens. And
it kind of goes in line with what Lacey just said too.
Yeah. Because when we get into the next parts, it's going to get very interesting to see how much the quality of film jumps.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I wanted to ask you guys, of any of these films you hadn't seen, is there any that you kind of go, maybe I will check it out? Lacey?
I think I saw all the ones that weren't really, really upsetting.
Yeah.
I think, and so the answer to that would be, I don't want to be upset as general rule. Like, that's not my goal. So I'm going to go with no.
What about you, Kyle?
Local Hero, I definitely want to check out, and I gotta give my Tutor a shot at some point here.
Yeah, I would recommend my Tutor. And by the way, I just had 10 to Midnight Charles Bronson just end. Yeah, you can skip that one. Not good at all. All right, guys. I want to first of all thank you guys all for joining us for this special presentation of 1983 Part 1. Next time, guys, we have Part 2. We're going to cover the movies of April, May, and June. And we're going to be talking about Flashdance, Lone Wolf McQuade, Octopussy, The Hunger, Twilight Zone the movie, Valley Girl, Dr. Detroit, Blue Thunder, one of my favorite Space Hunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, and of course, a little tiny movie called Return of the Jedi: War Games and Trading Places. Kyle, I know you're excited for this batch coming up. Which one do you think you might be more excited about talking?
There's actually a couple in here. I think actually, obviously, Return of the Jedi. I think War Games is an interesting conversation. But for Hollywood history and just a lot of stories in general, Twilight Zone, the movie, is going to bring forth some very interesting, depressing, and just overall how this movie affected Hollywood conversation.
What about you, Lacey? You excited for any of these?
I would probably say Trading Places and War Games are the two that I kind of recognize the most. Valley Girl, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Valley Girl. More on that later. But the two that I have not seen that I do want to see is I have not seen Dr. Detroit or The Hunger. I actually own The Hunger. It's on my shelf to be watched later, but I have not found where to watch Dr. Detroit yet. So I'm kind of curious about that. I definitely want to knock those off because and I do want to revisit Blue Thunder because it's been so long. So long.
Blue Thunder is a good watch with Airwolf.
I know, a little double feature there. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and get into some contact information here. First of all, if you guys are watching us here on YouTube, thank you so much. And if you're not, please do so. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. You get notifications every time we go live. And we are going live with shows like Culture Clash, doing some fun stuff live that are also exclusive only to YouTube. Our master feed for all of our audio podcasts are fpnet.podbean.com. And also, please give us a shout out on your podcast catchers. Give us a review as well. We appreciate that. Facebook, Fandom Podcast Network. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. And Fandom Podcast Network is also on Instagram and Twitter. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Lacey, where can we find you?
I am on the Facebook and the Twitter and the Instagram. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, Lacey. I'm on TikTok now, but I just watch them. I don't know how to make them yet. I'm an old fogey.
You're Lacey Pants, right?
I am Lacey Pants. That is me.
Gotcha. Cool. I like that. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me, of course, all over the Fandom Podcast Network. We're doing shows and leaving stuff all over our great Facebook groups. You can find me on social media at Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. I just want to say, if you can see the video, one of my kitties decided he wanted to get in on this. He told me beforehand he's waiting for me to start playing joysticks and streaming for him on Tubi.
That's awesome. We also have a TeePublic store for Fandom Podcast Network. Got a bunch of our logos from all of our shows. Buy something from there. Just search Fandom Podcast Network. Get one of these cool Time Warp t-shirts, by the way. We'd appreciate that. Lacey, thank you so much, as always, for coming on. I am looking forward to the next podcast with you. Love your movie, Foo.
Woohoo, I love it. I'm very excited. Now I really want to go back and watch The Outsiders again. I feel like I may have been a little bit negative in my comments earlier, so I might go back and watch that one again.
Great performances in that. Mm-hmm. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Kyle,
names go ahead. Like ridiculous, so it's awesome.
What was that? I'm sorry, Lacey.
The names are like Soda Pop and Pony Boy. Like that's just silly, and I love it. So we'll go. Yeah. I'll go and check it out.
And I like that time. Was it Baltimore? I think it takes place in that time during the 50s going on 60s. It's just a great time as well. So, Kyle, as always, thank you so much for joining me for Time Warp.
It's always fun to be here. I'm really excited for our next thing because I'm really excited to say, shall we play a game? And before we get out of this episode of Time Warp, Kevin, I just want to tell you, stay golden, Kevin Reitzel. Stay golden.
Stay golden, baby. Yes. All right, guys, thank you so much. And until next time, we're going to see you in Time Warp 1983 Part 2. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.